What is up, everybody? How are you guys doing? This is Rob of Rule of Two Review. Welcome back to the channel, and today we're going to talk about my take on some of this Nintendo Switch drama, or sales drama, that has been going around the past couple of days. Now, I'm going to admit that when I use the term drama, I'm not being exactly truthful. And if I ended up deciding to put the word drama in the title of this video, then it's definitely going to be a little bit of some joking clickbait, because I really don't think drama is the accurate way to describe these things. But there are some conversations going on around the Nintendo Switch, and it feeds into a lot of the different concepts and theories that I've been talking about for a couple of years now. And I know that some people who follow me or tune into my videos occasionally get really sick of conversations around Nintendo and the ideas of their next hardware and all of this stuff. And I get it, but it just is the conversation that's being had right now. It's something that I've believed in for a while. I find it interesting. I've always added addendums to my personal predictions that I could be wrong with my predictions, but I still have made those predictions because they're just what I feel, and that's part of the fun of following this hobby, is not only enjoying what exists at any given moment, but also looking forward to the future and thinking about what could be ahead or right around the corner. That's just fun. Now, the reason I'm having another conversation in today's video about this, and the reason I joke about the drama or the sales drama around the Nintendo Switch is, to be completely honest, definitely a bit of a response to a video made by RGT85, who I'm sure you guys all know. If you are watching my channel, you definitely know Sean's channel. And I've mentioned it before, even kind of recently. I know Sean fairly well. We've podcasted many times before in the Spawncast. He's a great guy, and he made a video recently where he was talking about Switch drama, right? This was his title to his video, because he's been having some back and forth conversations on Twitter. Some of them even with OJ from Player Essence, who I also know very, very well, and another great guy, and many other people, and also in responses to some of the videos that Sean has made about the status of the Nintendo Switch over the past couple of months. And so he kind of wanted to sum up some of his thoughts in this video that he called Switch drama. And because I already have kind of a stake in this conversation, and I find the outcome of where the Switch is going to be going very interesting, Sean talked about it in his video, and he mentioned, people are going to make responses and conversation videos about this. And I was like, yes, I definitely am, because I have thoughts on it. So that's what this video is about. So the general gist of this conversation being had by Sean and other people, this isn't truly about any one person or YouTuber or anything. I mean, yes, it's kind of started with that video from Sean, which, by the way, I agreed with almost everything he said. So this isn't even like a response or a call out. I mean, I actually pretty much think he hit the nail on the head in most respects. But the reason this whole conversation is happening is because some people are starting to be curious about what's happening with the Switch currently in terms of its slowing down sales and Nintendo reducing its forecast for sales. The fact that we all know the Switch is underpowered, and with every new day and every new big game release, the age of the Switch is being shown more and more. And because even most recently, and this also was very appropriate to Sean's recent conversations and videos specifically, the fact that the PlayStation is now starting to sell more than the Switch in some territories in some months. We're seeing PS5 start to sell more than the Switch, and that really hasn't happened. Switch has dominated for most of its life in most territories. And so this has a lot of people speculating and analyzing the trajectory of the current Switch and wondering if we're finally seeing evidence that it's going to be going away soon, and that, of course, again, my favorite topic pops into play, maybe Nintendo's next big step in their next hardware, whatever form it takes, could be right around the corner. And so what more can I even say about it at this point, right? I know I'm making my own 15-minute video about this topic, but the reason I say what more can I say is because it just kind of feeds into a lot of what I've already been thinking would be happening with the Switch, right? The whole reason I keep doubling down on this prediction isn't because in 2020 I said, oh, Nintendo's making a new console, just you wait and see. Because that was true from the day the Switch released in 2017. It was true that Nintendo was already working on their next big thing. That kind of nebulous prediction or way of thought means nothing. Anyone could do it. I, however, was trying to be more specific and saying, okay, based on what things have been and where I think things will go, and with the impending competition of new-gen consoles from Sony and Microsoft, at some point the Switch itself will be moved into the next-gen thing, and so I targeted a specific window. Again, I didn't just say, oh yeah, new-gen system's gonna happen at some point in the future, therefore I'm right. I said in the years of 2022 or 2023, we will probably see Nintendo's next console. I was saying that 2 years ago, and now 2022 is basically over. We're coming into 23, and all these conversations, for all of those different reasons I just listed, have other people finally seeing what I was predicting 2 years ago, that next year in 2023 might be the time we finally see something official from Nintendo about new hardware. And to me, that's very exciting. I love the Switch as it currently is, obviously and absolutely, and Nintendo's my favorite company. But I think the Switch's time is coming to its end, and it's about time for it to do so. We're in the 6th year of the Switch's life right now. As soon as March 4th, 2023 happens, we'll be in the 7th year of the Switch's life. And so, in a theoretical world where by the end of the year we see or even get to play a new piece of Switch or Nintendo hardware that is next-gen capable, whatever name it's called, you guys have heard me say this, doesn't matter the name it's called, doesn't matter the form factor, whatever. If it's so powerful that it can play things that the current Switch can't play, then it's next-generation tech compared to the current Switch, and if that happens by the end of the year, well then, we'll be kind of in that next generation, or at least Nintendo will have shown and confirmed that the next generation is coming soon. And so what's the drama, right, in this whole jokey concept about Switch drama that Sean used in his title and I'm joking about here in my video today? I think that when Sean used it in his video, the drama, quote-unquote, that he was talking about is the fact that, again, for a few weeks or a few months, I'm not quite sure how far back this goes, but he started making a couple of videos and having some conversations about if he himself was finally seeing the cracks in the Nintendo Switch, the age of the Nintendo Switch showing, the inconsistent performance of games, some of the games that were skipping the system entirely. Obviously, the slowing sales was the big one he focused on recently, and he said because of that, maybe I'm also starting to see that eventually, you know, Nintendo's going to have to move on to the next big thing. You know, this is a paraphrasing. I mean, you'd have to watch his many videos on it. I'm doing the best I can to summarize it like in a minute here. But he basically was saying, you know, that, hey, I think I'm seeing signs that the Switch can't last much longer, and maybe next year or sometime soon after, Nintendo's going to have to move on. And again, in his most recent videos, and this last one with the drama in the title, he was talking about he was really focusing on what he sees as slowing sales from the Switch and rising sales from the PlayStation 5 as further proof that people are getting less interested in Switch and Nintendo will have to move on soon. And he's obviously gotten a lot of pushback, and bro, let me tell you, Sean, I can relate, my dude, because 2 years ago, when no one had the balls on the internet to talk about a next-gen Nintendo console, because everyone was bowing and worshiping at the feet of the Switch because it was so unstoppably selling, and by the way, I agreed with that, it was amazing what it was doing 2 years ago, but I was predicting this 2 years ago and having these same conversations. So if anyone wants to talk about pushback, and of course I know Sean's gotten pushback and I feel for him because I've been there, but if anyone has experienced pushback on conversations about next-gen Nintendo hardware, it's me. Because I was doing it when no one would dare do it because the Switch was so popular at the time. And I loved how popular it was at the time. I wasn't making these predictions 2 years ago because I found flaws in the Switch. I loved the Switch. I still love it. At the time, I knew the sales were amazing, and I saw that they were going to keep going for a while. So it wasn't about saying that the Switch had problems. It was just about trying to think ahead 2 or 3 years and try to predict for the sake of just making fun predictions about where it might go. I'm an old man who's been through so many console generation changes over the decades that I know, at least I felt I knew how to maybe predict and see it coming even with a mega popular Switch. So I put myself out there and said, 2022 or 23, I'm gonna bet we're gonna see a new Nintendo console. I think 2 or 3 years from now, at the time I was predicting this, that's when we're gonna see it happen. And so when Sean has been seeing his pushback recently, I know he's been seeing it because I was seeing it 2 years ago. Of course, people are going to see it today if they say the same thing. Now, what I want to say is that I think a lot of the reasons Sean and other people like me have been predicting that the Switch maybe is starting to subside and Nintendo needs to start planning for the new thing, most of those reasons discussed are valid, and I agree with them, and other people agree with them. The one pushback I will make, though, is on the sales aspect. Because here's the thing. Is the Switch's sales slowing? Absolutely. Are they slowing because of any, like, negative reason? Not really. I think they're slowing because naturally that's what's going to happen. It goes back to my predictions in 2020. I mean, I think at the time, a lot of people, maybe especially younger people who haven't experienced a lot of console generations, they're not able to look ahead. They saw, you know, in February of 2020, the Switch was the most unstoppable selling machine almost in history. And if you're young and inexperienced enough, or maybe if you're just not thinking far enough ahead, whoever you might be, whatever walk of life you come from, if you rest in the moment of February 2020 best sales ever for the Switch, your mind doesn't allow you to think ahead to when those sales will slow down. You only are living in that moment, and you're thinking, oh, of course, Switch is going to sell this way forever. It's never going to stop. To some people's credit, Kimishima, in that short stint he had as president of Nintendo, talked about a 10-year Switch plan, and for like 3 or 4 years in a row, they kept saying Switch is in the middle of its life cycle, which really threw things out of whack. And I think that messaging got into people's heads, and it makes sense because, to be fair, it came from the top, so I understand why people would have taken it seriously. I certainly considered it as well, but you hear 10-year lifespan for the Switch, and you hear we're in the middle of the life cycle. You think that, of course, it's not going to be until 2027 or 2030 that we see the next hardware. You know, people will genuinely believe that the 2017 Switch hardware is meant to last a decade or longer before Nintendo would dare introduce anything new. Obviously, that is inconceivable and impossible. Nintendo would never do that. The Switch was never going to last that long. But people did believe it, right? And so I understand where maybe some people got the energy for a lot of that pushback and the inability to think ahead. But when we look at the sales, I was able to guess that around the time we're in now, Switch sales would start to slow down, and they are slowing down. So Sean and other people talk about Switch sales are slowing down. PlayStation 5 sales are going up in some territories. I think it's like just in Japan right now, that the PlayStation 5 is now starting to surpass the Switch every once in a while. And that stuff is true, but I don't think it's really the main reason to think that the next big thing from Nintendo is coming. To me, there's so many other reasons, most of which I've been talking about for a couple of years, that says why this has to happen. The slowing sales of the Switch was always inevitable no matter what. Even if people weren't willing to believe it 2 years ago, they thought the Switch would be the best-selling console from now until the time that the sun burns up the Earth in 8 billion years. But to a lot of us, it was obvious, hey, eventually the hype of everything dies down. The technology in the Switch cannot last forever. Small marginal upgrades like a Switch Pro or a new Nintendo Switch or a Switch OLED can only take you so far. Eventually, a big swing into a new generation is going to be needed regardless of the sales. Nintendo can't bank on this old tech forever. And so all of these things feed into why 2023 is a great time to potentially see this new hardware. The slowing sales of the Switch and the rising sales of the PS5, I don't think, are that. I mean, PS5s traditionally were impossible to find, and we're finally getting into this period where it's easier to find them, and we're getting emails about the fact that, oh, you can finally buy a PS5, or you can find them in stores. I found 2 in a store over the summer that I was able to buy for 2 of my friends because they've been looking for them, and I've been trying to help them find PS5s forever. And I happened to walk into a GameStop because they had PS5 signs out, and I was like, do you guys have any? And they were like, yeah, we have like 14 right now. And I was like, dude, hook me up with 2 of them. And they sold me 2 of them, thank God, right? So I was able to give those to my buddies, and so now they also have PS5s. So as PS5s become more available, and because they're way newer than the 6-year-old Switch, of course, those sales are going to start to increase, whereas the Switch sales, most people have a Switch. There's 115 frickin' million Switches that have been sold or whatever. So, of course, those are naturally going to slow down. The tech is old. Most people who want a Switch already have one. Sales will slow gradually, of course. PS5s, they're new. They've been hard to find. Same with Xboxes. And so those are obviously going to rise as the 6-year-old Switch sales are going to slow down. So I'm kind of just doubling down on what I was just saying, that I don't think the sales at this point is the biggest sign of the next big thing. I think the tech and just the evolving industry is the bigger sign. And the fact that the Switch is already 6 years old, like I said, we're going to hit the 7th year next year anyway. And so at some point, you just naturally need to move on to the next big thing. However, I will also say that in a year from now, when Switch sales have significantly slowed down, that's when we're going to really start to see the evidence that the next big thing has to be coming soon. And, you know, I'll wrap this up by saying something I've been saying for a while, is that my personal theory is that I think it's best for Nintendo to ride strong sales into the next generation, as opposed to wait for sales to really and seriously die down and then try to rise up a slowing hardware market and then bring out something new, right? It's like you can carry the strong sales in a plateau from the Switch to the new thing, or you can wait for the Switch to die and then try to lift it and resurrect your sales out of the ground with something new. Both are certainly achievable. Nintendo has done both in the past. I'm just saying my personal suggestion, or at least what I think would be best in the current situation, transitioning from Switch to the new thing, I think this is a scenario where it's best for Nintendo to carry the strong sales as opposed to wait for the dip and try to resurrect slowing sales. That's just my personal theory, and so this is my take on all the drama, and I think that we'll all be curious to see what happens next year, if we're even going to see new hardware from Nintendo or not.